We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Storm. This is my little digital safe space that I've carved out for myself on the internet to be a part of the zeitgeist, if you will. I thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you tuning in and following along, listening along, pretending to care. I know from 1 minute to the next, you just never know. I get it. That's the beauty of it being about me and about the fun things that I do and experience in my life. You know, some of them are going to be mundane to some people. Others of it will be just fantastic, most interesting, fun, and thought-filled thing that they've ever heard. Or we can hope. That's all that we can hope. TowardAnarchy.com is the place to follow along. And like I say, I appreciate you hanging out with me and coming along for the ride. It's a primetime thing that I do here every week, and it's worldwide on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Everything's worldwide now, right? You just throw it up there on the internet. That's the beauty of all of this, is that it's all central and connected. I have my little home, my space there on the internet at TowardAnarchy.com, so that no matter what, after you listen to the show, if you're ever curious about the guest, if you're ever curious about something that I've said or a story or something that I spoke about, most of the time there's going to be a link up there at TowardAnarchy.com. It's really just that simple. If you're looking for a particular episode, for instance, if you're looking for this episode, it's 2538. Click that episodes button and go to the year, and it should be right there. Look, there it is. Wow, that's magic. It's amazing, and I can change things in real time. I've done it before when I was doing the live show. The show's not live anymore. It's pre-recorded now, but for many years it was done live on Sunday afternoons, both hours. And I would, there's something wrong with the website? Sure, I can fix that real quick in real time. I'm in total control. It's my own little universe right here, and I'm totally in control of it all. And I like to invite you in, and when you find something interesting, I try to leave some sort of trail, something for you to be able to find your way to the information, to the guest, whatever it is. So the links and everything are up there at TowardAnarchy.com. You don't have to go there now. You can get there later. I assume most people listen the way that I do to things like this. It's in the background. It's like radio. It plays in the background. I'm doing other things, and I'm listening in, and sometimes I'm commenting back to the silly radio, even though it can't hear me. Yeah, it's that parasocial relationship. It has its benefits, and so I welcome you to come and do the same thing. But I do something that a lot of other people do not when it comes to presenting the information that they present. They have a website. It's there. They suggest that you visit it, but they don't necessarily give you a daily outline of what they are doing or what they're talking about. And that's only partially true even with what I do. If you get there and you find that you listen to the show and you see all these links that I didn't talk about, that's nothing new, because I'll put up the links and I won't talk about it. It's going to happen again today, in fact, because it just happens all the time that I'm just thinking about, oh, here's a link. This is interesting. That's fun. We'll add it up there and I'll get to talk about it. next week or whenever I happen to share that. And I'll by the time next week gets there, because I will be collecting these links and these stories, and because it's just my daily life. It's just my daily routine. I look on the internet in different places to find different bits of information. I'm interested in what's going on in the comic book world, and I'm interested in some of the things that are on YouTube, and I'm watching for new video games and releases for some of the games that I play, and I'm watching the politics, and I'm watching the economy, and I'm paying attention to all these things. I'll find something interesting, and sure, why not share it with everybody? Throw it up there at towardanarchy.com. Will I ever get to it? I don't know, but that's why it's there, and I don't see anybody else doing this out there. Nobody ever really has. I remember after I was doing it years ago, there was some other big person that started adding these sorts of things to their show as well, which I thought was kind of neat, because I did compete directly with that person, not in any real sense of the word, but it is a fact that they knew I was there, I knew they were there, and we were both live at the same time. Pretty kind of neat thing to think about, but I've always done this. I've been doing it this way for years. I have the website. It's up there, and I directly reference it, and I directly put it into the show and the episode of the show, so that no matter what, if you have questions, if you question some of the things that I talk about, you at least have some sense of where you might be able to go and find the information that I was sharing. Whether, of course, the guest, that's the easy one. That way I can just throw those links out there and you don't have to remember them. But when the guest comes on and you do want to, you don't want to you have to find back. When did he say the website? When was that? Probably at the beginning, but you don't even have to do that. It's just up there, and it's always there. And it's a powerful tool that I have, and that I don't understand why other people don't use, because it gives them a very specific. I see other people, they'll hold up the piece of paper that they're reading, or the newspaper that they're reading, or the article that they're reading, a print off of it, and they'll hold it up to a camera or something like that and tell you to go find the link. Here's the link. I actually have the link for you directly to the story, and it's through 90% of it is through regular sources. They're sources that just anybody can find, and I do that on purpose so that you mostly, hopefully, don't end up behind paywalls and things like that. It does happen, though. So what I'm getting at is towardanarchy.com is a very important part of the show, and it's a very special part of the show that not everybody has access to. Nobody. I don't know. Nobody's doing that. I don't hear anybody talking about, hey, look, here's the information, and most of them are just saying, well, you can go out there and find it. I found it. No, here it is. Here it is right there for you on the page. Episode is 2538 at the top of the hour. Dr. Dean Lloyd will be in here, and we will rock and roll with him because he is making his regular house call, only it's not quite the usual thing. It's not digital, at least not between us. It's the first time that Dr. Dean Lloyd and I are meeting. And he is here in Topeka, Kansas, and visiting me in the store and doing the show live with me. And you will see us seated side by side together if you're one of those people who happens to catch the video on YouTube or wherever you find the show. Do me a favor and click the like. It's at Toward Anarchy, just everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, Rumble. Look for Toward Anarchy. Type it into a browser, Toward Anarchy. It's probably going to get you to me. That's what I've spent my time doing in that digital space out there. But wherever you're finding the show, take just a quick second. Do it right now. Click that like button, because you'll forget by the time the rest of the show gets rolling, especially if I get to rolling and get to having a bit of an attitude. I try not to do that too much, but every once in a while I will get into the conversation with myself, and sometimes these things I haven't necessarily thought them out. They're just what I'm saying at the time, and not, it's not necessarily revelation, but the putting the words together in that particular grouping at that particular time as I'm ramping up, as I'm trying to make a presentation that's suitable for people to listen to. It catches up with you, and you get a little bit worked up, and sometimes I keep it pretty pretty simple. I could go full-on angry white guy and play that whole game, but it would be just that. It would be a game because I don't spend my time angry. I don't spend my time hateful. These are it's actually a pretty neat thing. I just saw the other day. Dick Van Dyke, that's who it is. He's basically 100 years old at this point, and he's one of these people that's very light on his feet, and he's always managed to be able to get around, and he's sharp, and he's healthy, and the reason he says he's as healthy as he is because he doesn't hate people, he doesn't get angry, and he just doesn't hate. He just doesn't have time for it, and I really don't either. I have my frustrations, but that's part of the conversation, is to get the frustrations out so they're no longer frustrating. I do the conversation, this thing every week for my benefit, so that I'm not dwelling on these things that are happening all the time that build up, and that's why I go through. I don't do news. I'm not telling you the news. I'm just telling you about these things that are going on in the world that I find fascinating and interesting, and this is sort of an anarchist perspective on it. I try to give that little bit of a twist, and like I was saying, I don't always get to the links up there, but they're always there for you to fall back on. If I mention something and then go off into something like what I'm about to after I take care of some business here real quick, then you'll be able to just go and look at those links and see those things for yourself and let me go on and rant and rave. Support Republic Broadcasting, republicbroadcasting.com. I'm sorry, republicbroadcasting.org. I'm thinking of shoprbn.com. That's the place where you go for the win-win. You support the advertisers by buying their products and their services, and they continue to advertise across Republic Broadcasting Network. It's republicbroadcasting.org. If you want to just click that donate button over on the left-hand side, it's real simple, just a couple of clicks, and you make a donation. The donations, the money that has come in from listeners is what has kept Republic Broadcasting Network on the air for years, and it's my privilege to be here, to be a part of it. It's really cool to be. I don't agree with everybody across the network, and they certainly don't agree with me. We definitely have points where we are there's a chasm between us, but that chasm is bridged by so many other more important things. The value of friendship and family, particularly a nuclear family. And I say these things not because I believe them as one of those manly men, one of those Andrew Tate guys. They talk about all these, and Myron and so these other guys that they talk about this manliness and this manhood and everything, and how women are this, that, and the other thing. But I don't see them necessarily. Yeah, they talk about the importance of a nuclear family, things like that, but I don't see them necessarily having a family. I see them talk about the quality of women that good men are supposed to attract, and that men shouldn't say, and nobody should settle. You should strive to be the best that you can be and to have the best that you can have in your life, particularly without hurting other people. These are all really simple notions, and they're absolutely right in those things, but I don't see them actually doing some of those things that they talk about. This is a problem with a lot of people that do talking, that they don't necessarily practice what they preach. I am one. I have a family. I have a stable, well-raised family. I did it on very little money. And my family we're not in debt. We owe a couple bucks here and there, but we're in no. It's something that in a month we could pay it all off. In less than that, if we really wanted to. It's nothing major at all. We've done it without debt. We've done it without borrowing or taking from other people. We've done it without having any particular specialized set of skills that somebody else couldn't learn somewhere. I did most of it through the same sort of public access systems that the rest of you have access to. We did it without any help. without getting anything that most other people don't have access to, and we did it better than everybody else. And so and we have no problem saying that. We absolutely recognize it. You can't. It's when I just picked up this thing the other day, called myself the Anarchist of comic books, and tell me I'm not. It's the same thing with the family. Tell me I'm wrong. You can't tell me I'm wrong, because I'm living proof of it. I'm living proof of somebody who come from a broken home, who came from insecure relationships, unstable relationships that changed every few months or every couple of years, places that changed every few months or every years. I grew up through the public school system. I was a latchkey kid. My mother wasn't home. She had a job. There was a guy running around sometimes here and there. I did all that. I grew up in the streets in the city around gangs. I put tattoos on myself. I started carrying a gun when I was 16 years old, and none of it kept me from being intelligent, being worldly, visiting different places in the world, seeing different cultures, even if just briefly, and even if not particularly different than general white culture or Western culture, just somewhere other than America, and all across America. I've lived in different places in America. I've been from one side of it to another. I've been most of the big cities, including okay, that's a bad statement. I've not been to most of the big. I've been to many big cities: L.A., San Francisco, East Coast cities, Rhode Island, Boston. I haven't been to New York. I haven't been down south into Florida, but I've been south into Kentucky and Indiana and Texas and Oklahoma and Arizona, and I've been to Utah and Colorado, Kansas, obviously, Nebraska, and not just been there. I've gone there to spend some time there, and I've been around. I've seen a few things. I've experienced a few things, and I have something to say about the world that I live in. And you're not going to catch me too often being particularly wrong, because, well, one, most of it's sort of a social opinion or social or political opinion or an economic opinion, and those things are all tied together. And really that brings me to I have all this stuff at towardanarchy.com, of course. It's episode 2538, Dr. Dean Lloyd coming in at the top of the hour. And there's links up there, and there are links that are following up on some things that I talked about the week before, and the stuff on AI and tech, and just how to deal with your technology, and some things about the economy, and just all the normal stuff that I talk about. And we may or may not get to those, because I wanted to just kind of have another conversation with Status one last time, and just see if we can come to a point of understanding on the force of the state, and using the state as a means of population controls and growth and management and what have you. I don't mean those things in a negative way. I mean them in the most positive way that you can think of, and the most positive way that the statists can think of. And so far, the best that they came up with was democracy, and, well, you can see how great that's worked out for us. So I wanted to have this conversation with Status, like I just said, talking about sort of individuals, and I thought about a couple of different ways of addressing individuals and talking about us as individuals, specifically because I think it's important that we address the idea of using force against other individuals, not against groups. We often hear about these things in terms of groups. Criminals, that's a group of people. Immigrants, that's a group of people. We're not talking about individuals so often when we're talking about using force and using government and using the law against individuals. And we ourselves are individuals, and so we should think in terms of the individual and the individual right. And I don't want to argue about words like rights, and I don't want to argue about positive and negative things. That's one of the things that a lot of these guys argue about, that I was just talking about. These guys, they argue about whether rights are a real thing or whether anybody has a right. And they often will make very fallacious, they're very bad arguments. They're just based in fallacy. That's fallacious. They're fallacies that oftentimes absurdity. It was one of them. Somebody was trying to show me the other day, talking to some woman, telling them that women are stupid and irresponsible and incompetent and they need a man to. I'm not exactly sure why they always say they need a man, but I guess they have their reasons. But he says something to the effect of, they're talking about strength and power and control and using force on other people, and he says something about men. If all men today decided to subjugate women, what could women do about it? And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about when I say that they're making these it's always an argument from a collective standpoint. We're never talking about individuals. They're talking about all men. Well, that's not going to happen. You can't get all men to agree on a beer. They don't even like the same beer, let alone the same woman, or treating women like other men would treat them. So there would have to be a massive cultural shift and a massive change in the way the way men anywhere value women, and we would all suddenly have to agree together to do something like this. So it's an argument from absurdity. It's never going to happen, but it's done in an extreme to make a point that's not particularly a good point, and that's that men are stronger than women. Yes, in a general collective sense they are, but can we talk about individuals, because that's what's important is the individual. Every single one of these people would argue that individuals are important and that your individuality and everything about you as an individual is singularly important, and it's not just important to you, but it's important to reality, because that's how we strive and that's how we thrive, because we make ourselves happy. We seek what's important to us to make ourselves feel better, and in doing so, as long as we're not violating other people and their property, we make a better world around us for everyone. When I love comic books, I enjoy comic books. I grew up on them. They had a massive influence in my life in terms of understanding the world, and understanding a different world, and understanding different perspectives that I didn't necessarily get from other places. I didn't want to read long, dusty, boring tomes, 900 pages, just to find out what it's like to live in Russia in the 30s or something. I just none of that ever interested me. I never saw it as being anything but just another form of entertainment, and I had other more interesting forms of other entertainment that I could enjoy, and that included comic books. I get the same amount of information and important feeling and sense of reality from a comic book based on the 900-page novel than I would the 900-page novel itself. That's the way I read. I'm one of those people that you hear about who reads really, really fast, and part of the reason that I do is it's a trick. It's just a trick, and it's worked my entire life. It's never failed me. I've always been high in reading comprehension. It's tested. It's proven. What it is I just read the first sentence of everything. It's just a quick read of the first sentence. I can read an entire book that way, read the first sentence, and tell you about the whole book. And there are other little tricks like that you can do as well to remember to recall those things. So you read the sentence, you write down just a couple of words or 3 words or something like that from every sentence that you read, and that allows you to be able to recall the information, but without saying it exactly the same way. It allows you to put it into your own words. Just some different memory tricks like that, and it served me well my entire life. Just a couple of little things like that. that have allowed me to read and comprehend things. Because if something structurally is written properly, the first sentence in any given paragraph is going to be exactly what the paragraph is. The rest of the paragraph just kind of proves or what have you, backs up the initial sentence. That's how we write. We make a thesis type statement, we back that statement up, and then we come to a conclusion. Well, I'm not looking for the backup necessarily. If I don't understand it, maybe I am, but if I read the thesis and I understand the thesis, then I'm also not looking for somebody else to tell me a conclusion, then I don't need either of those things. You understand how that works, and it's worked for me my entire life. I've always been able to I've always had that high retention of information with only absorbing a third of the information that other people absorb. So, and I don't think that it's failed me. It's very rare that I've had to go back and go, ooh, wow, it was the lack of attention to detail on that one that got me, as opposed to my own hubris. That one's much more likely. It's much more likely that my ego assumed that I was right without looking at the information, any information at all. We all get that way. It happens. The trick is to do it less and less as we age and get older, and to really to have facts and understanding about our world, and not just supposition and guesswork about what it is, our world, what's important in our world. And again, I'm living proof of it. I can back it up. That was the long version of Support Republic Broadcasting. It's a fantastic place. I love to be there. And this is the status conversation. So I want to talk about individuals. I want to set all these things aside, and I don't want to argue about particular words. So as individuals, it's you and I. You're a statist, I'm not. And that is the major difference between us. You believe that that democracy works, that voting is a valid means of power transfer, and I don't. Okay, that's the simple part of that. That's who we are in this conversation. And we are both individuals, and we have a certain right as people who are live. We're here, we exist, we have the right, as it were, to pursue what makes us happy, to feed ourselves, to grow our wealth. We have the right to do all of these things. We have the absolute right to do all of these things. And it really, that's to say that we're alive and we can do anything that we want. And so there's a line, there's a space, a place that you can cross that those rights become questions of morality, because then they impede upon others in one way or another, directly or indirectly, the things that we're doing that we claim are our right. They only are truly any sort of right if they don't directly, for sure, impact somebody else in terms of their property and their choices, and they're making their choices in their life to do the things that they want to do. It's because you can get bogged down in semantics when you're talking about rights. You can end up talking about these things that the state has sort of codified and pretends that it protects for us, or there's this natural sense of right that I'm speaking about. I think it's the most obvious one, that we're here so we have the right to do these things, and we have the right to move around. And this is what I started to say earlier, is that I wanted to find some space, one of these conversations that was a better conversation than the other one, and freedom of movement was just really the best one, because I think it's obvious to show methods of control and trying to control people's freedom of of movement. Everything from IDs to digital IDs to passports to driver's licenses to controls on the roads to borders to status of one type of person or another, a citizen or a resident as opposed to an alien or an immigrant, something along those lines. And these are groups. These are not individuals. Again, these are groups. These are, yes, and any individual can be any one of those things. But when we talk about them in this sense, when we're talking about statist presentations of these things, we're talking about groups. So we're talking about socialism. We're talking about collectivism. We're not talking about individual right. We're not talking about empowerment. We're not talking about any of the important things that you and I as individuals believe to be true, right? Okay, so then do you and I, this is the question, do you and I as individuals have a right or even a need? Is there even a need to prevent freedom of movement? Anyone from me? Do I have? Of course, my answer is no. I don't have the right to impede anybody unless they're trying to enter my property, in which case I have every right to stop them from encroaching on my property, up to and including death. That's an absolute fact of reality. And we're not talking about laws. We're not talking about the collectivist notion of things, except in the broader sense that you as the statist support those things. And I'm trying to expose to you and trying to show to you why those things are faulty, why they don't work. Because and the basic claim, of course, is that on the individual level, they don't work, so they can't work on the collective level. There's nothing about us as individuals that changes the fundamental aspects of our reality, of our morality, that changes when there's more than one of us. I'll get there. So the question is, as individuals, do we have a right or any particular need to prevent someone from moving about freely, except on our own private property? That's a given. So that's out of the question. My house, my business, those are mine. You, if I don't want you there, you're not welcome. You don't get to come there. It's my private property. That's it. Period. That's the end of that discussion. We don't need to go there. Everywhere else that's not your space, that it's not your call to make, which is a whole lot of spaces and a whole lot of places, right? So it's not your call to make, it's not my call to make. So you can't do it, right? There's no, you have no right, no moral right, no inherent right, no legal right. You shouldn't have the legal right. If you do, there may be some question about the law that you support. There's no right, and there shouldn't be any need. It's highly unlikely that any immigrant is coming for your job, you as an individual, me as an individual. Nobody's coming for my job. I don't care who they are. They may come for a job, but they're not coming for my job, because my job is whatever I want to do. It's wherever I want to do it. It's whoever I want to do it for. It's for however much money I want to make. It's where, and nobody else gets a say in it. They think they do. There's a whole lot of people that think they get a say in it, but they've been proven absolutely wrong for 52 years. So that's all there is to it. And they will continue to be proven wrong for as long as I live and for as long as my children live, because I raised them the same way. That that employment, that working, that participating in any of this is entirely voluntary, and nobody else gets a say. They can force you to. That's different than them actually having a say in what you do. Those are two different things. All of them claim they have a say in a whole bunch of the things that you and I do, but them forcing you is the only way they actually, or you complying, that's on you. So the question is, do you, you or I, as an individual, have a right or a need to prevent freedom of movement? The answer is no. We don't. We don't need to keep them from our job. We don't need to keep them from our property, because it's a default that we our job is whatever we do, and our property is our property. Those are our things. We don't have to give them up to anyone. No immigrant, no person crossing a border, whether it's from another state or from another nation of states, whatever it happens to be. So then the question is, if you say no, then you agree, and then statism is a failure. Certainly on the macro scale. On the micro scale, there's some possibility that we could voluntarily run our small communities through some method of democracy and voting and sharing and participation. It remains to be seen. We've done it in the past, but we're so far removed from that, it remains to be seen that there is any easy way to turn it back, to make it go in the other direction, and to suggest that we could actually survive in that sense. Because the question of the larger states and the nature of protection was supposed to be built on the idea that it was mutual, and that the reason that we protected each other is that not because we necessarily cared what the other one did or valued, but it's because overall, if someone's going to try to harm you, then what's to stop them from harming me? Because you may live in a different state, you may live in a different city, you may have a slightly different religion or something like that, maybe a different skin color even, maybe a different sexual proclivity, but we generally have the same values in terms of, if we're good people, in terms of how we believe other people should be treated and how we should treat other people, right? So it should be really simple. And so if the answer is no to that question, that we don't have it as individuals, then the question that we don't have any of those rights as an individual to stop somebody's freedom of movement, then how do we have them as a collective? Well, we don't. It's just force, like I was saying. We don't. There's nothing that changes. I'll repeat it. There's nothing about reality or morality or any other that changes when you and I and the neighbor or the guy down the street get together and say, all right, well, now we're a democracy, we're a government, now we rule because that guy over there is not part of the group. It doesn't matter. We voted. We have a majority. That's called a gang. That's what that is. Even if it's just two people, it's a gang. You gang up on one other person. Nobody, not 99 of 100, not the 1 to the 99. None of them owes the other anything, and neither one of them in a group or as an individual has any right to make the other one do anything at all, period. It's not, there's nothing, you can't do it. You can't go over to your neighbor's house. You can't leave your house and walk over to your neighbor's house and say, you will do this. You will absolutely do it, and you will do it right now, and you will do it at your expense, and if you don't do it, I'm going to kick your ass or I'm going to lock you in a cage. You can't do that. And of course you can do that, and he can shoot you in your stupid face, and he probably should if you're the type of person that thinks you can go around telling people that they have to do this and they have to do it right now and they have to do it at their expense, or that you're going to kick their ass. Okay, you understand this? There shouldn't be any question about that. Does it get better if the neighbor, if I go get the neighbor on the left hand side and I get him and we come over to your house and it's the two of us and we say that we demand you do it? And no, of course it doesn't. Is it 3 people? Is it 4 people? How does it, where is the number? What's the magic number? Is it 100 people? Is it 1,000 people? Is it 1 million people? Is it 300 million people? Is it 30% of 300 million people? What is the magic number that suddenly turns non-existent rights, immoral actions into existing rights and moral action in a collective sense? How does the collective manage to do that? Well, it claims that it has certain rights to be able to do that, but it's force. Force is the only thing. So it's might makes right. That's the best that they have, except that part of their might makes right is them suggesting that you can't have any of the might. In fact, the quote that I dropped in there just before the beginning of the show today is from one of these anarchists that I've read a couple of his things here and there, and economically he's just a stooge like most, like a lot of anarchists are. They're just economically ignorant, so ignorant that it blows my mind. This quote from Lysander Spooner. So these villains who call themselves governments well understand that their power rests primarily upon money. With money, they can hire soldiers, and with soldiers, extort money. And when their authority is denied, the first use they always make of money is to hire soldiers to kill or subdue all who refuse them more money. And that's it. It's that last sentence. And when their authority is denied, the first use they always make of money is to hire soldiers to kill or subdue all those who refuse them more money. That's it. It's about force. So it's an immoral force. It's an immoral use of force. It's an immoral use of authority that doesn't exist in the individual. And there's at some point there's a magical spot where it becomes okay. Apparently enough people. Is it 99-1? Is it 51-49? I haven't figured it out. Is it some percentage? It's not the total number. It's a percentage of the number, right? It's at 30% or something of the total population, and that's a smaller percentage of the actual, or a larger percentage of the voting. What is it? I don't know. Okay, but what if it's yes? If your answer to the question of do we have that interval, that's what we're getting at, right? You said it was no, so we agree, and that's it. There shouldn't be any greater question of it. That means the state is immoral. You shouldn't support the state. You shouldn't be a statist. You can, work on your community, work within your community, grow your community, do those things that are seemingly extremely important to our reality and to us as individuals, and forget the greater collective, as it were, because you're not going to be able to influence it, and you shouldn't be able to influence because you have no right, no moral ability to do so. You certainly have no individual right to do so. If you don't hire some criminals, some scumbags with some guns to enforce your will on other people, you have no will to enforce on other people. You are just another person with an opinion. That's the difference between you and I and the state. We don't have a whole bunch of weapons and a whole bunch of money at our disposal to force our opinion on other people. That's the difference. But a lot of people like to participate. Statists like to participate in that little system that seems to give them, the criminals, they need to be punished. Yeah, but do the criminals really get punished, or is it a lot of society that gets punished because criminals don't get the real punishment that they deserve, that they don't have within them the fear that they will be harmed, perhaps even killed on the spot when they violate another person or their property, as opposed to the possibility of them maybe being caught somewhere down the road by the state, having to go hang out and get free meals and watch cable TV for a period of time, especially if it's not a particularly violent thing, and if you do it without a particular set of weapons or tools, you can get off pretty light, and you'll be right back out there violating other people and taking advantage of other people until one of them decides that you're not going to do it anymore and exacts real justice upon you and puts a bullet in you. What is it? Why is it yes? Why do you believe that there's a percentage, a number, whatever it is, that you as a statist, that collectively you can you can control somebody's freedom of movement. You can say they can't go here when it's not your property, that there's somehow a collective property that exists, and there's collective money that exists. There's all these things. So it must be, let me offer you a couple of suggestions as to why. They're limited, and they're kind of all tied together, so there's not a lot of options. If there's something outside of it, I don't know what it would be, but You think you can control someone else's movement. Why? Economically, politically, or socially. Those to me seem to be the three things. They're topics that I come back to all the time. They're conversations that we have all the time. It's the main things that we talk about. It's economic, it's political, or it's some sort of social thing. So let's start with the last one. Let's start with the social. If it's a social thing, we take away the who. That's part of this that makes it so that it's easier to have this conversation is to not think of the immigrants coming across the line, just anybody crossing any line that is not your line. It's not your property line. It's not the space that you can defend, that you have absolutely every moral and legal and every other right within us to defend. It's yours. You built it. You made it. You paid for it. You worked hard for it. All of these reasons, these things that suggest that it's yours. These other places, how do they exist outside of those spaces that are yours? When they're not yours and you can't enforce it, and you have to give somebody else power that you don't have to be able to enforce it. That's the whole point, right? So if it's social, I can't fix it because we take out the who. So it's not about color of skin. It's not about the fact that a potential fact that they've crossed some line, that they're immigrants, that they're migrants, that they're somebody from some other nation state, not just from across the way. That's a consideration. If you take that out of it, then the social aspect of it kind of goes away, because you can't really point at them and say, oh, well, they're those guys, they shouldn't. And I'm talking about the criminals too, because this is why these things all tie together, because the criminals obviously ties into the political thing. The criminals are made criminals by the political system or by their actions. The ones who do it by their actions are obvious. They violate another person or their property that wasn't voluntarily offering themselves or their property up to this person, and that's a obvious crime against someone. And then there's the crimes that the state claims, and those can be anything. So you take away the who, as who this person is. It's a nameless, faceless. You don't know them. You wouldn't anyway. That's the point of them. Somebody can make all these claims about them as groups, but as an individual, you don't know who they are. You don't know them. So it's nameless, faceless. You don't know anything about them. That's taken out of the context, out of the question of whether or not you have any social reason. You don't like them because they're black. You don't like them because they're Mexican. You don't like them because they're gay. You don't like them because they're Protestant. You don't like them because they're Catholic. Whatever that is, none of that matters. The social aspect is taken out of it. So you have no social reason to argue because you don't know who they are. Period. That's it. That's the end of the discussion, because it's a blind collective thing that we're talking about. You can point to the ones that they point a camera at or the groups that they call them and say that one, but you still can't even say you know that one. You don't even know that one. So, all right, let's just get past it. The social aspect has to be taken out of it. Your opinion of these people or these groups doesn't matter. We're only talking about facts here and about what you can, as an individual, claim that you have a right to be able to do to someone else, that somehow you could collectively have that right as well, right? So then the political question of it. Let's take the criminals, the political question of it. Well, what about the political criminals? What about criminals? So many criminals are political criminals, and more people as we go forward in this reality, especially in America, will become political criminals. It's all you hear about in the news right now about them, mobilizing the FBI against the Democrats, or the president calling some Democrat a pig, or a Democrat liberal reporter a pig, or something. It's all very much directing the system at the political enemies and those voices. So it's actually just a tool, one side or the other. So you're just picking one side or the other based on a collectivist ideology. You may have your individual reasons within it, but the fact is your individual reasons, again, don't matter. Your individual reasons, your opinions, all of these things, whether they're political or social, however they're derived, don't matter. They don't matter. If you can't express them to an individual and have the individual accept them for themselves without force, without the vote, without saying that somewhere there's a guy with a gun that's going to make you do it eventually, and that's all democracy eventually is it eventually somewhere, whoever has the power, somebody tells somebody else with a gun to make somebody else do something. That's what the Spooner quote was all about. That's why even a broken clock can be right twice in a day, right? Just because he's economically ignorant doesn't mean that he can't be socially absolutely spot on. And the few things that I have read of his, it does seem like he does seem to get there to that point. These points that I'm making, that there are no collective means through which we can derive things that don't exist in us as individuals. It's not possible. It's a game. It's a trick. It's a manipulation of reality to suggest that we can, to suggest that it's okay that some people have power over other people that other people don't have ever at all, and that it's okay that some people participate in exercising that power against other people. So if you don't like these people, that's fine. We get it. They're dirty. You don't like their culture. You don't like their religion, whatever it is. They're a health risk. They don't vaccinate, whatever it is that you come up with. None of those things actually matter because they don't actually affect you as an individual, and you don't know who these people are. You don't have a name or a face to put on these individuals. They're just groups. And so then it's the economic question. Is it an economic reason that you think that you have control? Well, if they come here and they take my job, well, we kind of already discussed that. They can't really take your job. They can take a job, but they can't really take your job. Your job is what you do, and your job is only as secure as you are good at it and willing to do it. That's all there is to it. If somebody comes along and can do it better than you and do it faster than you, if they can do it for less than you, maybe somebody should hire them. Maybe not. Maybe you don't pay less. Maybe that's all up to you and the person you work for, the people that you work for, you guys having that conversation amongst yourself. And that was the thing about businesses last week. One of the aspects of business that people don't understand is that individual contract between the business and the individual, and why corporations separate that make it so that there's a separation between you and the people that own the company, so that you as an individual and your bad choices and your bad actions can't destroy everything that they've built. There's good reason for all of these things. So the economic question, to continue the economic question, they're not going to take your job. And then the next thing is one that crosses back over into politics and economics, and that's the use of the system to gain favor, which was, again, the conversation about businesses last week and corporations and incorporating, the difference between incorporating and creating a contract between people's, individuals, and corporate welfare whores. Those are two different conversations, just like this is with the economic question in terms of people being able to get welfare or not pay taxes or something like that. These are problems with the system that allows these things or denies these things, or that you, frankly, don't understand about how economics and money and taxation, or theft, as we call it around here, actually work. So these questions, they're all sort of moot now, right? Didn't we just... Let's go back to the beginning question, the thesis question. Individuals, do we as individuals have the right or some need to prevent freedom of movement? Not just a freedom of movement, anyone. It doesn't matter. Just anybody's freedom of movement. There are all these different things. There, like I was talking about the traffic controls and things like that. These are all manipulations of people getting about freely, and somebody benefits from manipulating them. The base claim is that it's about safety, but the fact is stop and go when you're talking about traffic, just to continue the analogy, stop and go causes more accidents than flowed traffic. So traffic controls actually contribute to more accidents than we would have. The more pollution, more use of gas, more wear and tear on vehicles across the board. The stop and go caused by traffic controls causes more problems and damage than somehow figuring out, whether it's roundabouts or whatever it is, giving people continuous flow of traffic. And the manipulation of speed or turn signals, things like that, those things, those are just ways for the state to make money off of people, because they don't, not using a turn signal or speeding doesn't harm other people. Period. It doesn't harm other people. Wrecking into somebody, whether you're speeding or failing to use a turn signal or causing them to wreck, does. Two different things. Again, if you can't separate those two things, then you shouldn't be choosing anything in regard to what other people decide to do with their lives and their money, their time, their health. You can't tell the difference between claiming that something is a violation of someone or something, that it's dangerous to do, is entirely different than actually harming someone or their property. Then you're not qualified to be in this conversation. I don't even really know why you would be listening at this point. I think you would have given up a long time ago, because the conversation is beyond you. And so often anymore, it seems like that is unfortunately a key factor in a lot of these things. They're just so many times that the capacity just isn't there anymore. And I keep getting that, and it's unfortunate. I don't want to get that. I don't want that to be the case. I don't want to be the irresponsible, no-list making kind of guy that I am, who manages very well to manage his life and the things around him, and in a great positive way in terms of the rippling effect that they have throughout everything else and everyone else around me, and still be able to come here and say what I say about things, and not. There's nothing that in any of this that you can deny. So where is the breaking point? That's my question. Where is that spot? What is it? Is that percentage or that number? I think I've asked this in other spaces at other times, but it's that same general question. What's the magic number? I guess it's probably with theft, right? With taxes that I've asked that probably the most. What's the magic number? What is the percentage? When does it stop being a thing that we should all be obliged to do and we should all generally agree with, to being a thing that is just completely stealing from somebody and taking what other people are not due, what they don't deserve, what can't be theirs unless they use somebody else to force them to take it? And do you get that that's what statism is? That's what supporting the state is, regardless of your left or right ideology, or you're somewhere in between ideology, that's all the state is, and all it will ever be is some method of force and control against the people that don't agree. And it doesn't matter what they don't agree with, because what they don't agree with is going to change from one administration, one law, one situation to the next, because there's no morality built into it. The question of morality has been removed the second you go from believing that you don't have the ability to do something as an individual to believing that you can give that collective ability that give that ability over to the collective and have that stand as the moral standard, that it be okay, that it's not okay for me to steal from my neighbor, but if me and a couple of my other neighbors get together, it's perfectly fine for us as a group to steal from him and make him bend to the collective will, our collective will. It's such a clear and obvious thing to me, but I continue to have the conversation, and there are so many different little paths and things that we could take and go down and sort of try to deal with the minutia. But I thought this is just very simple. Can you stop him? Can you impede people? Can you keep them from moving, whether it's lock them in a cage or just deny them from going from one place to another, in participating in the things they want to? Do you have that right? I don't want to argue about rights. I don't want to argue about the semantics of things. I want somatic action. SOMATIC, somatic. That's the hand gestures that you do with a spell, you know. There's the abracadabra part of it, but you got to do the whoosh and the thing with the hands too. That's the somatic part of it, the part where it's the action part of it. That's the part I'm concerned about. And I think I've proven today that statism itself in general is a very failed notion, at least in what it is that we see today. The idea of democracy, the idea of a greater macro democracy, and that there can be a central authority and that a small number of people can absolutely dictate to the rest of us what we can and can't do with their time. And I'm way over.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crying in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. My life has value.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Up every once in a while. I like how it does that to us. Today's a special day. I'm really digging being alive today, and not just because, you know, it's another day and I'm still alive. After years and years, I finally get to meet Dr. Dean Lloyd. If you get to see the video, you'll get to see him. We're actually sitting in the same room together. We're not looking at each other on some computer screen. This is the first time in forever. We've known each other for years, been talking to each other for years. This is the first time we're in person. And he brought me this. I told you guys about this, how we have this weird connection before I ever met him, how I knew of him through this Accutone book because my wife worked for an association for body work and massage therapists and people doing Accutone and needle puncture. What are they?
Acupuncture.
Acupuncture, there you go, with needles. There, I knew there was some word missing in there. And so he brought me a copy of the book and signed it for me, and so now I get to check out this book after all these years. And I get to say hi to you in person, man. This is really cool. I don't even know what to think of it. It's just a weird thing. You know somebody for a long time. This is a phenomenon that has existed before, but exists differently, because while you could have known each other before years and years ago, exchanged mails and maybe a photograph or something like that, now we see each other. It's real. It's in real time. It's
not AI.
It's not AI. It's something interesting and different, and it's akin to being in the same place, in the same space, but it's not the same. It really isn't. It's not the same as us getting to have this face-to-face conversation. So I'm excited. I'm really glad that you were able to come down. By the time everybody hears this, I don't know about you, but I don't mention when I'm going somewhere. I don't talk about it, especially on the social media or anything. I don't talk about things until after I come back, because I don't want people
invading your space.
Well, I'm gone. I'm gone. They might literally invade my space while I'm gone and try to take over my space. Yeah. But yeah, I don't necessarily want them to know I'm around either. If I were to mention that I were headed in your direction to Denver, there'd be 1 million people I would have to stop and say hi, or I'd have so many people mad at me.
Well, there's two things that on my way down here that I was considering. One is that I was giving myself permission to leave that world that I'm so, not only familiar with and comfortable in, but also you have to decide whether or not it's time to cross the river or strengthen what you know. Okay?
Yeah.
And the drive was pleasant because we've had good weather, and I'm driving from Colorado, and it was, a good 11 hours of driving, but I had to make some stops along the way.
It's so much time. I've made that drive so many times. Let's see. When did we start making that drive? My grandmother moved to Angeles. It is a one-horse town. I don't know, maybe 15 miles this side of Oakley, Kansas. So it's out there in the west. It's just out there in the dirt. My grandmother retired and moved out there. I don't even know when it was. Late 80s, I guess it must have been. Jeez, that's so long ago. I can't even think about it. That's so hard to consider that it's been that long ago. Then my mother got divorced, and she rode off into the sunset and headed that way. And then when I went to college, Oakley is just down the road from Colby, Kansas. And Colby, Kansas has one of the premier, it doesn't anymore, I guess. It had one of the premier radio programs in the country. It's a community college, had the best radio program in the country.
Really?
Yeah. And I was always a radio guy. I grew up in Colorado listening to Uncle Nasty on KAZY and KBPI, Rocks the Rockies, and all these things. I even worked for KAZY for a summer as an intern, and it was at my heart. So when I came to chill out, is what I did. I had to get out of Colorado. There's sometimes you want to leave. You're like, I cross the river, and there are other times there are dudes shooting at you, and you run your ass across the river. So I headed out and hung out in Kansas for a while, kind of dried out, got my head cleared, and found out there was this killer radio program in this little random community college in this tiny little town. So I enrolled in it, and I am still the only community college attendee radio personality to win the National Association of College Broadcasters DJ Personality of the Year award. Still, it's UCLA and Harvard, and that's my competition. And I beat all those guys out. Just little old me from little old school in Kansas. Yeah. That's my history. That's how I ended up here. Yeah.
But so, energy follows you wherever you go, and you take those experiences, whatever they may be. And what we get in the medical field, the arrogant doctors that will say, it makes you so smart. Where did you get your training? And that's been you're up against Harvard and Princeton or whoever, and these Ivy League schools and high prestige. But I've run into there's a lot of overeducated idiots out there where logic doesn't apply to their life experiences. They may have been really good at book smart, and reading and maybe understanding, what they're taught, but thinking outside the box has been something that I never thought twice about.
Outside.
Which is really leading into today's topic.
Yeah, no, it fits right into it, doesn't it?
and that is that I want to bring in a kind of part two to the paradox topic, in what is living in a cage really like, okay? And when you've realized why you've lived in a cage, how you've lived in a cage for so many years in your life, when the cage is gone, what happens? Well, most of the time you live like you're still in a cage, that you don't know that you're operating from a different place. So your nervous system has to be rewired to integrate what it's like to move outside of the box, so to speak. And most of the time I'm dealing with practitioners, and I'm picking on them because I see that they don't have to conform the way they think they do. They may have to literally leave the profession, which many have. Dr. Dotson, a friend of mine, Dan Dotson, he was doing colchicine injections and low-dose naltrexone, and he literally got ran out of Colorado because it wasn't, he was doing it without the quote-unquote legal stamp of Colorado. He had to get approved. And he literally went through the court system and everything, and they kicked him out. And he was, I saw him last time, he was in Colorado Springs, and then he moved to Georgia. But he's working at a good feet store. I mean, this is a man with a education and a very astute and moral man, okay? And I don't mind dropping his name because his story is one that was known through our community, and losing him was a great loss because he was one of those that went out with me when we had, remember West Nile virus?
Oh, yeah, that was a thing.
Yeah. Well, we went to these communities, and a lot of them were illegal immigrants, and they'd come to do the harvesting. And we'd go east of Pueblo in that community out there. And these people didn't have hardly anything. I mean, even a toothbrush was a luxury. I mean, that seems crazy for us, you know.
But there's so many things like that, though. It doesn't seem weird to me because I consider that all the time. I consider those notions all the time, that what we understand to be normal here in America is not normal anywhere else. Like, nowhere else, even in other Western cultures that I've been to Europe and run around a couple places around there in Wales and England and talking to different people, and it's just different. They're not the same. Things are, we take a
running
lot.
Water.
Really, and just the way you wipe your butt. It's the same. It's a different thing in other places. We do things so differently here in America.
And that's the reason when I say that when the cage is gone, do you operate like you're still in one? Okay, and that to me is, well, what are you striving for? What is it that you're putting your attention on that allows you greater access? And what kind of access do you want? Do you want greater access to comic books? Do you want greater access to your health? Do you want greater access to free time? You see, when you identify what it is you're trying to achieve, that's half of healing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's going in the direction that you are pointing yourself so that you're moving into something that makes sense to you.
Gives a clarity.
All right. So if I'm to give you first I'm going to talk about chemistry and alchemy, and then I'll come full circle to the paradox. But
we were talking about last week.
Yeah.
So, it all ties together. Go figure.
So let me first give this segment. I'm going to read from page 390 in the book that I use quite often. It's called Cruising the Epiphany Highway, and this is volume 2. And it was by my dearest friend and colleague and lifelong brother. He is just a wordsmith unparalleled by anyone that I've ever come across. There's so many brilliant writers, but in this case, it's appropriate to focus in on what he's saying here. So I'm going to talk about this, chemistry and alchemy. There is chemistry and alchemy, each having both their mundane and esoteric processes. Chemistry deals with the composition and properties of substance. Alchemy deals with the vibratory signatures and spatial arrangements of energies. Chemistry deals with the body of nature. Alchemy deals with the consciousness of nature. Science is mundane chemistry. Magic is esoteric chemistry. Relativity, quantum mechanics is mundane alchemy. Transcendent mastery is esoteric alchemy. And so, ultimate realization that you have always realized that there is not a thing to be realized. Just the intellectual articulation of such perspective is, and I'll get to the next page in a second here, paradoxically mind-boggling, while to actually function from such a level requires an appropriately evolved neurobolic organism in optimally adaptive homeostatic equilibrium. No matter what may be believed by an organism capable of processing such considerations, if their system is not suitably integrated, the energies released by such implications will distort the operative life support process of the organism. Now, that's the cage removed, right? Your nervous system is not, if you're living in a cage, you feel confined and you feel that you've got a way of operating within that cage. But life is expansive, and there's a lot of contraction going on in our culture right now. There's not a lot of expansion. This is not what you would call a golden age, okay? 2025.
No, it's like we're going backwards.
Devolving.
Yeah, very much so.
Because
in everything, politically, economically, socially, you name it.
That's right. And do you see why I read that paragraph? Because what I'm talking about here is a nervous system that integrates a range of motion that is not only satisfying, but has a purpose. And I would say they both are intertwined. By having purpose, you gain satisfaction.
Yeah.
And
because purpose is fulfilled. And that's satisfying. Yeah. Well, purpose gives you direction, and the idea is to fulfill the purpose and meet the need. And absolutely, that should be satisfying. Boy, if it wasn't, what would it? Nobody'd do anything, right?
Well,
there was no reward feeling for it, no satisfaction out of accomplishing anything. Nobody'd do anything.
One of the characters in Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged, if you've read that.
I have not.
It's a big book.
I'm familiar with it, but I am not. I haven't read it.
One of the characters mentions that what's the most important thing? What identifies the dysfunctional, or what her words are, or something to that effect, degraded human, and it's one without purpose. And I think that's chapter 5, as I recall. I'm going back in my memory a while.
Jumping back.
But that tells me that if you are clear enough on a purpose while you're there, you can put up with a lot. When I was in med school, I had to, and I worked 2 jobs. I was going to the point of exhaustion, but I was young and I was motivated. And one of the jobs that I have was a caregiver for quadriplegics, and this was a very hard job. But I had to take into consideration where I was going, and that's what got me through, because I wouldn't have been able to make that kind of leap in my growth unless I knew that I was going somewhere that I wanted. Right? So here I am functioning in what I would consider there was a lot of logistics that I had to put up with and a lot of rules that I didn't see as being necessary, but I still did it. I managed to somehow get, and I'm working on 4 hours of sleep, 6 hours at the most. I mean, and my instructors were thinking, gosh, is he going to really keep up this pace? I'm falling asleep in class, kind of thing. And they did know that I was working too. And so, most of them anyway. And so there was a kind of foundational desire that kept me going. Now, in your life, could you draw a parallel? Because you mentioned when you went to communications or in broadcasting school, did you have things that you were having to put up with that were, I would say...
That's school in general, isn't it? In general, it's school. There's always other things that you have to do, that you have to put up with that don't seemingly put you on the path. They're a little bit of a distraction. That's the entirety of the certainly the public education system in that sense, where you have these things that you might want to learn, and then there's all this other stuff that they say you have to learn. And of course, there's this huge disconnect that creates a schism, and it creates the problem that we have now, where the biggest problem with our educating people is that they're forced to go there, that there's nothing there for them. They're not going for their own reason. And the another parallel in there, when you're talking about sort of putting up with it and going through the motions and doing it because you realize there's something on the other end. That's a music thing. That's a musician's thing. Musicians play their instruments in pain often. Mm-hmm. Especially when they're learning to play them and they're teaching their body to do things their body doesn't normally do, whether it's trying to keep different beats and different rhythms with different parts of your body all at the same time, or whether it's just pushing the buttons or whatever it is, it's stretching your hands on the fret and getting those fingers to stretch and get stronger. You play through the pain. It hurts other people, but it builds physical connections in the brain. It builds a mapping in the brain that didn't exist before, and that's what the pain is about. And you play through the pain. They tell you, play through the pain. Same with football. You play through the pain, sports, because it builds up strength.
And use stress is a term that's used, which is beneficial stress. And I remember there was times, and I'm a double bass player in orchestra, and I had to, because I was not only playing that, I was also playing the electric bass, and I was this kid that was being tossed around in all these different bands because I was so good. And I don't mean that as arrogance. I was just that I was playing for several different bands, and one of them was a Peter, Paul and Mary group type of situation where it was a folk group, and they're all throwbacks from Woodstock, and and they picked me up. I couldn't drive, right? But I had this big bass, and I'd put it in the station wagon, and anyway, and my bass, and I'd play everything. We'd play bat mitzvahs, we'd play parties, we'd play in parks, we'd play, all these gatherings, and and I'd play anything. I could sight read, so I'm playing polkas, and I'm playing classical, and I'm playing folk music, and I'm playing rock, and I'm playing anything and everything, which it totally just consumed me. And I'd have to, talking about working through pain, my fingertips with sandpaper just to build up the calluses because I was playing so much. But the pain, it was good for me. I know that sounds like it's a paradox, right? Why do you want to live in pain? It wasn't that. It's that my striving was the primary target. I was motivated. I wanted it. And I don't know where that came from, but the desire was there. And that's something we all have if we
It's
really...
instantly satisfying. I think that's a lot of it. I mean, you're just talking about things that are satisfying and rewarding to you. There's something about playing an instrument, conquering an instrument, making music, making sounds with these other things that very satisfying, very, very satisfying.
And exactly.
It's real. It's you. You're doing it. There's nothing else involved. It's not somebody else. You're not listening to radio. You're not watching somebody else do it. You're doing it.
And that communication that you have with your instrument is something where you don't become separate.
Right.
You're together. You're one. You know. You could also say that in the act of making love.
Yeah.
You know, that's a unifying, intimate connection. And in music, in my father's case, he was a genius. He is still alive. He's in his 90s, but he was a genius artist. He was a car designer, and he got to the chief position, which is the highest position you can get. And when he was working for Chrysler, he worked for Ford too. But what happened is that his pain was he was a painter, and he was so meticulous. He was so dialed into his artwork that there was a pain that he had to endure to create this beautiful image that he would see, and that took a lot of effort. It took a tremendous amount of effort in some cases, but it was also his yoga. And in my case, in your case as well, our music is a yoga. It's a discipline, and it's part of me. And so what did I do when I walked in the door?
Playing.
My ukulele. I was calming myself down from a long trip.
From a long drive and a restless night in a motel room in a strange town. Yeah, I could see why one would need a little bit of a calming spiritual moment. Yeah.
But for music, you and I, it doesn't have to be. It could be pottery. And that's another.
Yeah.
It doesn't
draw.
Sculpture, anything that's the art. But the art.
Shuffle comic books around.
All right.
We are in the comic book shop. I didn't mention that. We're in my shop here, and I'd had you over to the house, but it's not particularly inviting.
That's okay.
It really isn't. This is so much better. It's nice and open, and it's bright, and my house is none of those things.
So here we are in a culture that is taking away in our education system music.
Yeah.
They're taking away art.
Yeah.
And they're even taking away in some cases physical ed.
Mm.
Now that to me tells me that the energy of those things threatens the establishment that wants
either
to control
threatens it or it takes away from its directive, one way or the other. Maybe it doesn't threaten it, but it's a distraction. People, come on, just stop doing that. Come back over here.
Play on the computer.
Just come over here and do this. It's all right. That's fine. We get it. It's out there, but you don't have to do that. Just come back over here with us.
So we're literally rewiring. So, okay, you have a desire. And remember, art is without it, we can't, in my mind, make sense of our world. We do make sense of our world through art. And even those, stick figures and the rocks of, primitive man and the pictures of what look to be like deer or something, elk or whatever, and then, the tools and them chasing it with their hammer, whatever it was.
Whatever.
I mean, that's art. That's because their life is expressed on those stones. Carvings, right? I don't know how old those are, but they're ancient,
Well, they tell us a story all this time later.
Right. And the way we're going to get through this is, first of all, realize and there are a lot of very good definitions of what the problem is. What I'm not hearing is solutions.
That's because the solutions they're complicated for the individual. They're not, you can look at it, you can analyze it, you can look at it, you can study it, and you can say, this is what's wrong, and this is what you should do to fix it, but that doesn't apply to people. It just doesn't apply to people. That applies to a situation, an idea, a problem that exists that people have, but it doesn't necessarily apply to the people. And so you have any number of reasons why people try to fight you on, staying in the cage. You open the door for them. You say, look, this is a whole world for you. But they stay in the cage because it's easier, it's familiar, it is safe, theoretically. I mean, it's safer. It's safe, certainly in the sense that when you leave the cage, you don't know what's outside there. You've only been shown what's outside there. It's the Plato's cave thing that we were talking about. You've only been given sort of a shadow version of what's really going on the outside. And so when they do open up the cave, a lot of people freeze. It's a
shock to their system.
Yeah. Well, what are they going to do about it? Because there's no more. It's all on them at that point. And they've never done anything before. Everything that they've done, they've been told to do. They were told to go to school. They were told that you grow up and you marry somebody and you have 2.3 kids and a dog and a cat and you get a job and you go to college. You do these. We're going to have to pause for a second. I think that might be. Okay, so before we were so rudely interrupted, we get new comic books. Next week's comic books already being delivered, and that's not very many of them. There might be some missing, in fact. So they don't know what to do when they get outside the cage. What are they going to do with themselves?
Well,
They've never been instructed on what to do. It's all strange. It's all new, and they're responsible for it. That's the bigger part of it, I think, is that they're responsible for it. There's nobody else that they can sort of look at and say, you do this for me, or if it goes wrong, you're the one that I can point the finger at and try to absolve myself of having messed yet another thing up. It just, and I think that's the way a lot of people feel. No matter what you do, even if they're already sort of free people outside the cage, because we're in one gigantic cage, and there are a whole bunch of potential cages inside the cage that we're each inside. Some of them are, the cages that we've locked ourselves into, and others are things that people have put us in. And each one is a new layer of, what's next? What comes next? What do I do? Who am I after I go through this? Why am I, and why do I get to be the same? Will I get to be the same person that I was before I went into this thing? And that's definitely scary for people. They're going to change. It's going to be different.
The philosophers, just like Carl Jung, in his psychiatry, there was a danger in him bringing forth his findings because it challenged, and we can go way back historically, Socrates and all this, but what we find is that when you start to push the envelope and then create a paradigm that's more suitable, appropriate, and not controlling you. Right? Because the whole point is that the system is set up so you are controlled. That's what, in relationships, same thing. You're set up so who's control, who's in charge, who decides, kind of thing, right? Well, I've made some astute observations, and one is that I've learned that you have to do it gradually. You cannot break free from the cage. You can get aha moments, but that's your discovery stage. Oh, well, you mean... Yeah.
It could still go any direction at that point. Just because you made the discovery doesn't mean you've solved the problem. You're just getting started. It could still go wrong for you.
Well, this is why, an illustration of that, of course, in your life is music. Right. That you've discovered a new way of operating, new kind of rhythm. Maybe you like a Peter Gabriel rhythm that's complex rhythm patterns or something, and it's new to you, and you're so excited. I knew I was when I was music, I learned to go, oh my gosh, I can play this, and this is beautiful, and that rhythm pattern is something that I need to integrate, and my fingers have to match the sound, and I have to play it just right so that it isn't too loud, too soft, too far ahead of the beat to behind the beat, anything that starts to integrate. And that discovery stage, once you've got that, you have to integrate it mechanically.
Right.
It has to be part of your nervous system. And when you do, then you can put your own signature on it. Then it's your creative process, right? It's the satisfaction out of going through the pain. Because, and I mentioned this in earlier shows, is that pain is blocked energy. Okay? And power has no mind of its own. It is, power can be used. I could take a hammer and build you a beautiful house.
Anybody wielding it's not the power that's the problem. It's like saying the gun is the problem as opposed to the person that's pulling the trigger. Or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Insanity, goes along with people that are in the mindset that you can't achieve what you want. In other words, they'll kind of convince you that you can be fooled by not being secure enough, right? Or not having what it takes. When I was in, when I was like second or third grade, and I wanted to be, a classical musician, and I wanted to be at the top in the Philharmonic, and I remember, yeah, well, you go ahead, and they say to me, yeah, that and 2 bits will get you a cup of coffee. I mean, that was the standard line.
Yeah, but being anything in 2 bits will get you a cup of coffee. I hate lines like that.
But that's
it's so dismissive.
It's dismissive, and it's insulting you. It's telling you that you don't have what it takes. And I became negatively charged. I was, I'm going to show you. I'm going to be the great, I'm going to be an orchestra, and I'm going to be in the top, orchestras in the country, and I'm going to show you, and all these things. But I was negatively charged.
Right. And that's not the way to approach things.
Well, it's power.
You can get through.
It's power, but is it really what you want? Yeah. And what I want is understanding. And that comes back to what we were talking about, is the memorizing versus understanding.
Right.
And when you are in that place where you stand under the experience and know how it works, you can control it. I can pick it up, I can put it down, I can decide to write or decide not to. In other words, any of the decisions that you make come from a conscious place because there's purpose involved, right? And what I want is satisfaction. And that is, it's satisfaction in my music, if it's satisfaction in my book, if it's satisfaction in doing any of the shows with you, or doing or I'm eating well, or my health. I have to gain the knowledge, and I was just relentless in my studies. I would just continue and continue. And when I did get to a point to where I realized that I didn't have to know everything. I knew what I knew, and I made that the best information that I had to work with, and it was enough to satisfy me. And so when I talk about when you remove the cage, and most people, they understand what their problem is, but they feel paralyzed because they don't feel they can do anything, the change comes within. It's always been that way. There may be circumstances that change around you that you have no control of, like the weather, for example. What happened in Jamaica? I mean, it's just devastating, totally, ruined. That's outside influence. But it's your inner gauge, what I would call, that would be your guide in terms of how you are pointing the direction away from a dysfunctional government, let's say, or dysfunctional laws, let's say. You don't feed the energy. If you don't agree with a particular law, like paying taxes, on property that's, exorbitant, and it's supposed to be going towards, schools, and it's supposed to be going towards, the infrastructure, and it's often not, and you're in disagreement on so many things, where do you put your mind? Where do you put your energy? And that's the art. It's the art of being skillful at giving. And I've talked about this before. And how you skillfully give is by appropriately deciphering just how much energy needs to be put in something that keeps you alive, right? Survival, and how much of your life is really being enjoyed. Because if you're not enjoying your life, you're going to be draining your energy. It's going to be mechanical.
Well, it'll be real short, too.
It'll be short, and you're going to break down more quickly. We have a word for
short
that.
and painful.
Yeah, it's called catabolic. You break down more quickly. Anabolic means you repair more quickly. And so if you're taking on the task of being creative and satisfying, that's power that you have in what we would takes energy to make energy, as you know. And if you're in that creative process, you're changing the universal direction of things. In other words, because you're being satisfied, I don't care what it is. I mean, you could be a maintenance guy at the hotel I was at last night. It could be, this UPS guy that just dropped off your comic books. And it could be, an author, whatever. It doesn't matter what you do in life. It's where your head's at when you're doing it. And because if like I said, I was in school, I knew that I had to put up with something to get where I wanted, although I didn't know where I was going exactly.
Right.
I had put my mind in it. So this, to me, is the issue that most of the very astute either radio show hosts or authors, they're putting out there that they understand the problem. They understand the war mentality. They understand controlling you from a government. They understand how monetary systems are made more complicated. That book I've been reading that you gave me, that it is simplicity is because the truth is simple. It's just
it is.
It's just we make complications out of it because it can get so in our head that we are having to complicate the world to make it right for us. And that's the paradox. Because you look at all these comic books and all these figures and things that you have around here, but you're comfortable here. It might drive somebody else crazy because it might, they walk into an environment that is so stimulating to them that they couldn't relax.
That's the thing that happens a lot around here. Yeah, people come in and they're blown away by there's nothing like it around.
No, and that's why I'm saying is that when you're comfortable with yourself, you can move in and out of spaces. It doesn't matter where.
Comfortable with you. Yeah, it doesn't mean you're the comforting spot. You're not going somewhere else to be comforted. You are taking your comfort with you. This is in your head. This is where the rubber meets the road in this finding solutions thing that you're talking about, because that's why I started to say earlier, when we're talking about solutions, you can have them and they can be right in front of your face and you can spell them out. You want to fix what's wrong with America in terms of its economics, take the government out of our money system, period. End of discussion. Mm-hmm. How do we make that happen? How do you make that happen? How does that guy make that happen? What is his role in this? What is my role in this? That's the thing that gets people, and then they have to learn to separate what it is they can do and what they can't do, and learn how to accept the things that they can't deal with and find ways to work around them. So what do? Our dollar is broken. Trade in comic books. Trade in Bitcoin. Trade in gold and silver. Trade in Magic the Gathering cards. It's funny because we get people all the time talking about the comic books as if they're just a comic book. You know what I mean? It's just some comic.
Like
it's
a
just
newspaper.
A comic book. It's just a newspaper. It's just It is a piece of art. It is some number of creators' livelihood. It is all of these other things. It's not just a comic book. It's actually currency. It's a store of wealth that a lot of currencies don't have. They don't have the ability to go into storage and come back out the same value. You take $1 and put it in the bank today and try to go withdraw it a week from now. It's less than $1, maybe not a week from now, but you get what I'm saying, is that value is not really guaranteed. And of course, it's not really guaranteed with anything, except that what people miss is that intrinsic value that comes with these things. And the intrinsic value, of course, of a comic book is the fact that you can read it.
And you're talking about diminishing returns. Yeah. And there's a story in a comic book. There's a way of relating to it, It might be a movie.
To the creator, to the movie, to the storyline, to humanity, to...
Whatever. But it's a tool. See, this is what makes life unique by way of perspective, is that the only religion I see as being valid is life. If I see that I am in life and love life, then life will show me where love is.
Absolutely.
Where it comes from. And if it comes in a comic book, or if it comes in my own creative process, or in my own ability I love swimming. Okay, I love playing music. And my work, is, of course, in the healing arts. And blessed are those that enjoy their work. Okay? And that those kinds of energies are the ones that will be remodeling our new paradigm. Because it's unstoppable, the implosion. That's me talking. Yeah. That's my view. Yeah. It's unstoppable because they don't have a working paradigm. They really don't know what they're doing.
No.
If they did, they would not be doing this.
Yeah.
And if you want to have the 3 homes and, 14 cars and all this kind of thing, fine. Just know what you're doing. And they don't. All they know is how to steal, how to manipulate, how to lie, and how to change the perspective by making it look like they're doing something.
Yeah.
They give the persona of appearance. It's all a facade. Yeah. It's not real but in their minds they see that as being the only way for them to achieve their goals.
Well, these are the people that when the door is open they don't leave the cage. These are the same people.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have to be in their system. They have to be where somebody is taking care of them and telling them what to do, because they don't know what to do with that. These are the same people that couldn't hold a job at a Burger King. Most of these people, seriously, and for their own, for whatever reason, some of them would be incapable of doing the job. Others of them wouldn't want to do the job, feel the job is beneath them. For whatever reason, they're incapable of doing it. They couldn't do it. They wouldn't function it. It would be, I don't hate McDonald's or Burger King. I could work there. I know how to make a burger. I know how to put ketchup on a bun. But that's not all that goes into working at McDonald's. It's not all that that's what goes into making a burger. This is a job. Your job is not making burgers. Your job is doing the job. Your job is selling McDonald's and all the burgers and all the shakes and dealing with the customers and making sure the drawer is balanced at the end of the day. And there's all these other things that when you're talking about, especially I think government people, you're talking about people that are compartmentalized already and in a place where whatever limited skill set they have, it probably only applies right in there. What else are they going to do? I mean, how many of these clowns went to school to be lawyers or poli-sci majors or something like that? I mean, seriously, these people can't do anything but sit around and pontificate their buttholes. It's just ridiculous. Whether or not they should be tanning them in the sun, it really, truly is one of these things that I don't believe that these people are capable. I really don't.
No, they're incompetent, and they're reaching to, because they're afraid. They're afraid of what's going to happen to them and the system. And when you're afraid, you're controlled.
Yeah,
you're controlled by your fear, right? And so, in order for us to keep our minds clear, I hear a lot of good information that's coming out with prep. Like you need to have the obvious.
Be ready.
Be ready.
Sure,
but
but that don't mean much.
It's the state of mind as the most important part of your preparation, because we're not given the time of when these major catastrophes, if they're happening in our lifetime, are going to happen. Yeah. But what we do know, where you have to take the best of that information, have batteries for your flashlight, have clean water filters, have a backup, if you have the generator, if you need electricity, which you probably do. And so in any case, all these little things that are part of the equation. But while you're doing it, I would submit that in the process of doing this, find joy in it somehow. Find some happiness.
Well, that's why it falls down. Again, it's the same thing. You're get prepped, get ready, be ready, but there's no joy in it. It's emergency. It's you got to do
living
this.
in an emergency.
Yes, it's just this constant heightened state of alert, and you're going from one. I think this is how most people live. This is something my wife and I talk about all the time. We see people around us that they thrive on the negative. That they can't derive energy out of the positive because they don't even know what the positive is. They don't even know how to pursue good positive energy for themselves because they've never been told that it's okay to do that it's okay to feel good, that it's okay to chase your bliss. That we're fed a bunch, just a bunch of horse pucky.
Well, that they've never had the tools. See, and that's where it becomes. If you've never had the tools, how are you going to navigate through all the emotional retardation that we're dealing with, right? There's so much of it.
Yeah.
And
every turn.
Yeah. So...
and we got to deal with our own and everybody else's that's around us. Especially the ones that aren't dealing with their own, that are still impacting on our lives that we can't get away from. You're not familiar with anybody like that, I'm sure. I don't think anybody has anybody like that in their lives. No, there's always that external on us, and that's that part that we can't control. And it's real easy to go, all right, well, here's all the stuff that I can't control. Let's just put it over here. But then there's a certain subset of things that we can't control that we can't just set aside.
And you've brought up something that I've been meaning to bring up in other shows, and I'm glad you said it, is that the greatest teachers are those that upset us the most, right? If we're not resolved in ourselves, now you mentioned that when we were talking before the show, how you had that business partner of yours that did some unethical things, and you a while to get over that. I remember the time when you were dealing with that, and finally that energy was taken out of the equation, which is,
It took me like 3 years to rest up from that crap before I was like, okay, I can come back again and do something, because I've had a chance to just get all of that toxic crap that had happened in the previous couple of years out of there. And it's just, I don't even want it sucks when somebody ruins your thing.
Oh gosh.
You love your space and your place and you have your things, and somebody comes along and they destroy it.
Well, this is why we have to be so good at our ability to navigate the energy that's all around us. Okay? It's skillful giving, and it's being conscious of how much energy output you're giving to something that is not appropriate, because it's not helping them either.
Well, it doesn't help them. It doesn't help you. It's the uncontrolled anger thing. It's displaced and misplaced anger, things that are energies that you can't recover. There's not, when you throw negative energy out there, it only comes back as negative energy.
Well, this is why we all need a wholesome discipline here, because it takes energy to make energy. I personally like hiking. I like swimming. I make the most out of what I can do when I can do it. But there are times when I'm so tired at the end of the day, but I'll still make myself do it most of the time. Sometimes there's nothing left in the tank and I'll give in. I mean, there are those times. But when you get to a place where you're satisfied, one satisfaction is one satisfaction. But 1,000 dissatisfactions, 1,000 times complaining, 1,000 times, feeding the problem, doesn't give you that one satisfaction.
Mm-hmm. Only the satisfaction.
And I would say that most of your listeners want to think outside the box because they know that the paradigm that they've been given doesn't serve them. And that's your first step in making the realization and decision that you're not going to play that game. Play your own game and be aware. And don't go dummy up. I've seen a lot of times where people would just allow themselves to be going along with the herd mentality, going, with the party line, because they say things that make some sense to them, but they can't quite articulate all of the issues that are involved with it, right? So that's why, and I love questions, and if you get questions that come in email, I have more answers than people have questions. And I don't want that to sound like an arrogant statement.
No, it's an openness to more than yourself. It's being out here and in here at the same time. It's really hard for someone like us to explain it to other people that don't already understand excess energy, properly directed energy, the consequence of misdirected energy. That you pay for that a lot. And you, because it is easy. Once you cross that point, once you cross that river, whatever it is, the Rubicon, that no turning back point, it's easy. It's real easy, and it gets easier. Unless you bog yourself down with everybody else out there that hasn't caught up yet.
That's the paradox.
It is, right?
You're saying, because the higher you go, the tendency is to become more and more alone.
Yes.
You don't have the groups that would necessarily be participating in whatever it is you're doing.
Well, it's so shallow.
Often is.
Isn't it? I mean, because the reason you turn away from those things is because they don't interest you. It's like people talking about the weather. I'm not a farmer. I don't care about the weather. And it's a thing that people do. What are you talking about? Yeah, I know. I can look right outside. It's sunny. It's a beautiful day. Thanks. Nothing else to talk about? Is that the only thing that you can... That's the only subject that you feel safe in broaching? That's one of the biggest problems with the small talk and the nonsense is that we're told not to talk about politics. We're told not to talk about religion. We're told not to involve yourself in other people's wealth and other people's health.
What you're talking about also crosses over into another thing that I talked about with you before the show, was that it's also the changing of words. And is this going to change our consciousness? Well, just as an example, in my field, it was called, and I'm saying was called, Oriental medicine.
Right.
Okay, that's the area that has been getting a lot of attention, and it's now changed to Asian medicine. So now all the Oriental medical schools have to change their name, and all the institutions and so on. They now, because you can't say Oriental medicine in the academia anymore, you have to change it to Asian medicine.
Well, you can't even say it in Dungeons and Dragons anymore. Any of that tribal stuff has been removed.
Is that so?
Yes, and so the beasts are now people. They're not just beasts. They're not just orcs and trolls and things like that. They're creatures with feelings and tribal nature and of course they've been making this argument for a long time, since long before Dungeons and Dragons came around, in fact, and that's that the orcs and the goblins are not white people is the thing. They're black people, they're brown people, there's something some white guy created, a ogreish character so they could represent his fear of black people, and they've been talking about that. But Tolkien, Tolkien was that his orcs were black people that he hated, but he's racist. It's just a ridiculous notion, and unfortunately, we got like 1 minute.
Oh my
Yeah, no. Right?
Oh, but this would just fly right by. This was great fun.
Yeah.
Can we do it again?
Absolutely.
I don't know.
I'll have to go that direction this time.
Yeah. Get it all.
I got to get back to Colorado. I haven't been there forever. But like I said, when I do, I'm gonna have to call you, and I'm gonna have to call Dwayne and Eric and Jeff and
set it all.
Yeah, it's gonna be night after night.
You're not gonna tell anybody you're going.
No, I won't. I'll show up with a few certain people and say hi. And that's the way you have to do it. The real reason I don't do it is because I don't want people to know when I'm not at my home. When I'm not home.
But this is the topics that, Michael, I feel people need to hear. There's a lot of superficial discussions that I just don't feel go far enough for me. I have to take it to...
And none of them ever go far enough because there's not enough time. And it's all so interwoven together. I talk about that all the time. That how can you try to concentrate on any one thing when it's all there? It's all... If you start pulling on one thread, those things over here start falling apart.
The domino effect, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the deeper I go, I'll just conclude by saying the lighter I feel.
No, I didn't. That's fantastic, and I think we should leave it that way. Always great talking to you, Dr. Lloyd.
Peace.
My friend, take care. And the rest of you, we'll see next week.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network.